All right, hey everybody, welcome to our second ever live stream here on the right now Jordan Dischinger-Smedes YouTube channel, soon to be Apes versus Everybody at some point. OBS, if you were here for the first one, you remember I had some OBS issues. Slow chat is turned on for a reason. If you were here last time, the chat got out of hand a little bit. So we have a moderator today. We also have slow mode. So it's good to see all you guys here. But again, slow mode is on for a reason. People got out of hand last time. I want you guys to be able to ask questions. I want to see the questions, and I would love to be able to actually answer them. So that's why slow mode is on. We also have a moderator. So if you're being obnoxious, if you're not here to actually get ready for the exam tomorrow, you may be asked to leave or put in timeout, as they say. So hi everybody. If you guys can give me either a thumbs up or like you're good, we hear you loud and clear. I assume so. But as we found out last time, I buried things behind my head. And so just helpful to hear that you guys are getting the audio coming through and everything. I assume so, since nobody's saying muted like in the G chat when you have your stuff muted. So anyway, we're going to be going up until about 9, a little bit after 9. So good question there in the chat. The reason I have us started out here on my YouTube channel is because I just want to show you what I would do in the final minutes here, final hours really, to make sure you're good to go. So clearly see I'm good here, see I'm working. So thank you for all of those positive, so many thumbs up, you're goods in the chat. But the reason I'm starting here is because these 3 videos, how to write the environmental science exam FRQ, whether it's math-based, whether it's digital or design, experimental design, or whether it's propose a solution. These are 3 of the biggest bang for your buck videos. If you're nervous about the math, we've had a lot of questions about it. So I would watch this video and stop and practice the math in this video. Super helpful to do that. And so I would check that out. Also, if you go to playlists here and you check out playlists, you're going to see, if you go through Christy Shirt's math review. So there's another video here, another playlist that's on my YouTube channel. You know, we've got all of the systems. I would look at also the must-know top 10 concepts for APES exam 2021. So those are some playlists that I'd be looking at tonight if I'm doing some last-minute cramming, and that should help you out here. Can we go through a half-life question? I don't think it's going to be on the exam. You know, knock on wood now, but the chances are very low. What I will say is Christy Shirts in her videos here goes through half-life. So you're welcome to look at those. This replay will be available as soon as we're done. I'll make sure it's posted. You guys can check that out. I will make sure that what I'm showing you is linked. In fact, it's already linked in the chat, but let me just do this right off the bat. I'm going to take my link tree and put it in the chat, and I'm going to pin it. And what you'll see is that if you open up that link tree, so go to my link tree here, the 2021 released FRQ set number 1 plus unofficial answers is here. We're going to be going through that. We were partway through it on Marco Learning. Shout out to John from Marco Learning and everybody from Marco Learning. An awesome team with awesome resources. And so we were just on their channel. In fact, you can go check out their live if you're wondering why we start out halfway through this first FRQ set. But what I want to do is go through the rest of FRQ set number 1, unofficial answers from teachers. So these are not College Board answers. These are not from AP itself. We'll go through unofficial answers and hopefully help you understand a little bit better, like, what is this going to look like? What do we need to be able to do on this FRQ? How are the questions going to be phrased? So we're going to go into that here. There are a lot of questions coming in, so I want to try to answer a couple of them or point out, like, what should you be worried about? What should you not be worried about? And Kyra has a great point. If there's a half-life question, it's probably going to be single point. And you can check out Christy Shirt's, review video if you have questions there. Another question, do I need to know all the non-renewable and renewable sources of energy in depth? The question is possibly. I mean, it comes at you on an FRQ, and you do need to know a fair amount about it. What I would do is focus on advantages and disadvantages of every energy source. So that's coal, oil, natural gas, And then that's your renewables, so your solar, your hydro, your biomass. I wouldn't worry about hydrogen fuel cell as much. You know, it's not as likely to be covered. Anyway, so we have a second on word dials question, so let's check that out so we can try to get the answer. Can we do a math question? I haven't had enough experience with them. Yes, we're going to look at 2 math questions tonight. In fact, we're going to look at 6 math questions, all 6 questions from these FRQs. So let's go into it so we don't run out of time here. I do have to get out of here a little bit after 9. I'm going to actually be cooking some vegan chorizo scramble for my students tomorrow. We're going to have a little kind of potluck before the exam to fill our stomachs with some nice plant-based food, you know, lower our carbon footprint a little bit, but also just have some camaraderie and some friendship before the exam. So we have to keep going because I've got to actually, you know, get out of here and get that set up eventually. Anyway, diving into this official, unofficial scoring guide, I should say. This is not official. And yes, we are about to look at some math, and I'll talk you through it. So here we go. We're going to start out on question 2 here. So question 1 was all about dams, hydroelectric power. It was about hypotheses for experimental design. Go back and watch the Marco review of that replay, or the replay of that review if you need to see that. We're not going to cover it here because we just went over it. And also shout out to everybody from the Marco Learning live stream. If you just came here from there, that's awesome. Glad to have you guys joining us here. So let's take a look now at this document. And what I need to do, I learned this last time. I learned my lesson, you guys. Somebody in the chat was really nice, and they were able to help me make sure my head wasn't covering things. But let's make sure that my head isn't covering things when we go through this here. Because last time, my head was covering critical information sometimes. And the questions are far more important than my head. And so let's make sure I'm not covering things up. So if you take a look now, hopefully what you're seeing is me off to the side, small, and giving you the full experience looking at the questions. So here we go. Question 2. Pesticides have been utilized for many years to increase food production and control pest populations. They can be both beneficial and harmful to humans and other organisms. So question A. Very short introduction there. So we're right into question A. Pesticide use has advantages, disadvantages, and unintended consequences on human health. Describe one benefit to human health that can result from the use of pesticides. So we need a human health benefit, and we need to pad it with some detail. It's a describe, so we can't just leave it alone. We can't just say kills mosquitoes or stops malaria or increases food access. We need to elaborate. So let's pad it with some detail. So we look at our answers here. We could spray pesticide to reduce the population of mosquitoes that carry diseases. Now, your answer is much stronger if you use a specific disease. West Nile, malaria, yellow fever. A student in the Marco review asked, what infectious diseases should we know? I'd say West Nile, malaria, Zika. You should know the mosquito-borne illnesses, and you should know waterborne illnesses, cholera and dysentery primarily. Those are human health problems. But never overlook, too, the fact that we could just increase crop production, and that's going to mean more food for people, more food availability. So that's great. I want to answer a question in the chat here. Anna M. If then so format for hypothesis, I would not use that format. I would go increasing or decreasing the IV will lead to increasing or decreasing the DV. In fact, let's take a look at one really quickly because it is that important. We have this experiment above where students are asked to identify a reasonable hypothesis for the experiment. The experiment is a homeowner in the Northern Hemisphere considering putting PV solar panels on the roof, and they want to know if facing the compass different directions of the panels will maximize the amount of electricity in kilowatt hours. So a really easy hypothesis is if the panels face south, independent variable, direction, they will generate more electricity in kilowatt hours than panels that face east, dependent variable, electricity generation. Notice that you do not need to explain why. So if you are identifying a hypothesis, no explanation necessary. Just increasing or decreasing the IV or changing it south, east, will increase or decrease the IV, the DV, dependent variable, electricity generation. So keep it simple. You don't have to explain why. All right, moving on to our pesticide question here. Identify one way pesticides can enter the human body. Another relatively easy point. You don't just want to say through the mouth. You don't just want to say drinking. Be a little bit more precise. So if they're sprayed on a field, we could breathe them in if we're nearby. If we eat food where they were used, it could get into our bodies by eating the food. So there is an easy identify. 2 easy points right off the bat. Make sure you take your time here. I said this in the last live stream, and John said it there as well. Take your time. I want to ask it or answer another question from Sarah. Would you have to get a correct hypothesis for point? No. That's the beauty of the hypothesis, Sarah. You don't necessarily have to be right. Notice you can even give a null hypothesis. A null hypothesis is that compass direction has no effect on the amount of electricity produced. So if you're panicking, go with a null hypothesis. That is actually something you'll learn in college if you take science classes. That usually the way you actually accept results is rejecting the null hypothesis, saying compass direction does have an effect. But you can say it has no effect. There's a lot of chances there will be an opportunity for that. Hayden has a question about, no, you should not inhale the pesticides. That would be a way they could get into the body if they're inhaled when they're sprayed, and that would be bad. That would not be something that you would want to intentionally do. And your eyes might look big like that if you did, because you probably would be inhaling respiratory irritants and maybe carcinogens. So definitely not. These questions are going to be not on the test because this was the released FRQ, but these are questions that are very similar. So moving on here to another question about the pesticides. So here we're looking at cotton farmers in southern United States, and they're using a chemical pesticide to control insects over a 40-year period. To study the effectiveness of the pesticide as an insect pest control strategy, they put traps in treated cotton fields, and the number of pests captured were compared to the application rates for the pesticide. So they want to see, does the amount of pesticide we use impact the number of pests that we capture? Now, there's something you need to be careful of here. If you're trapping and capturing a pest, that means it's alive, and that means that we are not killing them with the pesticide. So you might be tempted to think, oh, capturing pests is a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's an indicator of poor pesticide effectiveness. So make sure you understand what's going on here. I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat. These are the 2021 exam FRQs, meaning they were given on the first exam, which was on May 14th. So they are not going to be on your exam. Okay? And Kyra has a great point. They are pinned. So you may view this document in the link tree that's pinned. Going to be hard to fit in some LD50. I would just tell you to check out the video for topic 8.12. In a real quick nutshell, it's the dose at which 50% of the experiment organisms die. LD50. If you have to create an experiment, Isabel, make sure to check out my second video in that series. But what you're going to need to do is just give quick, kind of blow by blow, like independent, dependent variable groups and gathering data. If you propose an experiment, it'll be 1 point, so don't get bogged down. Back to why capturing them is bad. Capturing them is an indication that they're there, which means they're not dead, which means the pesticides are not working. So let's talk through this here. 1960, and something I heard from Tony V, who's a veteran APES teacher, is when you're looking through a data table, tell yourself a story. Figure out what is the story here, okay? And here's the story. In 1960, we used no pesticide on the cotton field. So we captured 700 pests, meaning there are a lot of them living. In 1975, we used 500 grams of pesticide per hectare. We only captured 2 insects. That means that they are mostly dead because we're not capturing many of them. They're dead. The pesticide's working. Then we go down, slowly we're increasing the number of pests that we're finding. So all of a sudden in 2015, we're applying double the amount of pesticides and we're catching way more insects. That just means we're finding more insects, meaning they're there. So that's what I mean here. You have to tell yourself the story. What story do the data tell? And these data tell that the pesticide's not working as well because there are more and more insects showing up. Yes, there is a video on every topic in Unit 9. Check the playlist. Oh, thank you, Kyra. Excellent, excellent moderator there. Moving on though. Identify the year when the pesticides were most effective at reducing the size of the pest population. This is what I said about catching pests being an indicator of them being there. In 1975, we sprayed 500 grams per hectare and we caught only 2 pests, meaning there are basically no pests. They're dying. Pesticide Treadmill. Hyper Oats. Hyper Oats gets the first shout out for the night. In fact, let's just go right in there because Hyper Oats is is spot on here. So there we go. Hyper Oats, you nailed it. It's a pesticide treadmill. I love it. So here's what's going on. Over time, the pests are evolving resistance to the pesticide because we're using more and more pesticide, but we're finding more and more insects in the traps because it's not working. It's not killing them. They are in the traps instead of in the ground, instead of being dead. So, yes, this data directly represents pesticide resistance over time. Trevor Tong, you get a shout out too because you know your pesticides. So describe the change in the number of crop insect pests in the cotton fields over time. This is an easy point. So what you want to do is say that the crop pests increase either rapidly, exponentially, by a lot, a ton. It's very big, the increase. It's not just a little bit. Not just a little bit. You want to increase, you want to say it's increasing by a lot. And so if we look here, giving data is even better. If we say it went from, 2 crops, 2 insect pests captured when 500 milligrams were sprayed, 500 grams per hectare in 1975, all the way up to 1,100 insects caught with 1,000 grams of pesticide per hectare in 2015, then we're giving actual data. That's even better. But you really want to say it is dramatically increasing. Yeah, great question, Garrett. If you say identify for a year, that's fine. Just the year and you're out. You do not need to say the year in which the pesticide was most effective at reducing the size of the pest population was just 1975. So there you go. So Anna, you have a great teacher, and your teacher is right that it's helpful to provide a full sentence. Let me show you another example of something here, Anna. If we go back up to a different identify one advantage other than generation of hydroelectric power for the formation of the reservoir behind the dam. You should not just say water, or you should not just say irrigation. You should not just say recreation. You should say the reservoir creates recreation opportunities. Yes, Genesis, this will be posted. But yeah, Kyra's got a great point. Full sentence to be safe, unless you're just identifying a year. I can pretty much promise you that 1975 is sufficient. All right. Kenny, will Bogs be tested? Not enough to study it tonight. If you don't know Bogs now, you're fine. Do not worry about Bogs at this point. So we went over that, describe the change. Again, really valuable to give actual numbers. If you want to take your describing trends or changes in data to the next level, give actual numbers. Can't say enough about how much that helps your answer. Okay, moving on here to our next question, which is explain how the change in the cotton crop pesticide effectiveness between the initial application in 1975 illustrates genetic resistance in pests. So this is where those people who were spot on, I can't remember their names now, I gave them a shout out, but I already forgot, but they're spot on. It's a pesticide treadmill. So what's happening is at first the pesticide is effective, but later the pests that are dying are vulnerable to the pesticide, but a couple pests are surviving. Let's look back here. 2 pests survived in 1975. Those 2 pests are super pests with genetic resistance to the pesticide. They got together and mated. Next year we have 3. Next year we have 8, then 14. And so very quickly, genetic resistance to this trait is passing through the population. And that's why we're going from 2 to 3 to 8 to 14, 83, 150, 405. The pests are evolving resistance. Now you want to say something about the increase here being linked to genetic resistance. So if you look here, again, you want to say they are evolving resistance, and they're passing that resistance on. So I love this here at the end. This process is repeated with each application, leading to an increase in the number of resistant strains of the pest insects over the years. So there we go. Great question there. Yeah, definitely you don't want the pesticides in your body, so I can't say enough about that. That would be bad. They're a carcinogen. Taking a chance to look at the chat here. Kai, do we have to memorize the different types of coal? It's nice to know anthracite is the cleanest burning. It's nice to know peat is not quite coal. It's still being compressed. Bituminous, subbituminous lignite. I'm not stressing about those. But anthracite being the most dense and the cleanest burning is nice to know. Okay, describe 2 effects of pesticide use other than death on non-target wildlife. So endocrine disruption, great answer here. You could have hermaphroditic individuals. This is sad because these individuals have both male and female parts and they're incapable of reproducing. So there's a certain internet personality, he who must not be named. I don't like to associate with him or give him airtime, but he talked about frogs being turned hermaphroditic. He used a different word though. That's what he's talking about. So pesticides can be endocrine disruptors. They can cause individuals to develop intersex qualities. They could also just have a mutation that could be passed on to their offspring. So they could get a mutation that still lets them reproduce, but they give that mutation to their offspring, and now we have that effect rippling down. Another thing you could say is that if it causes a population decline in one species, it could disrupt the food web. So talk about food web dynamics. That's always a great thing as well. So take a look at crop rotation. Crop rotation is often used as pesticide to reduce pesticide use. Describe the process. Crop rotation is when different species are planted in the same field over and over and over again. So what that's going to do is prevent insects from laying their eggs in the ground and then hatching and having their preferred food source right there readily available. So that is how crop rotation works. Now we're into the proposed solution and the justified solution. To everybody who's asking, can I cram in 2 hours? I'm self-studying. I didn't do this. Like yada yada yada. As much as possible, try to focus because these next 2 points are big ones that you should be able to earn if you're careful. And so try not to worry too much about cramming for 2 hours or 5 hours or 3 hours. Focus. Kyra does have a good point though. Review units 5, 6, and 9 tonight. That's your best bet. 5, 6, and 9. If you're throwing up a prayer hoping you pass, review 5, 6, and 9. And you got to hope you just get an FRQ topic you know well. Let's go back here to propose a solution and justify a solution. Propose a reasonable method other than crop rotation of reducing the use of pesticides in agricultural practices while maintaining high crop yield. My favorite one is introduce a biocontrol. So introduce a natural predator, an owl to come in and eat bird pests, to come in and bring ladybugs to eat aphids. You don't need to know a specific example, just a biocontrol, which is a predator to eat the pests. You could use intercropping, which is interspersing a bunch of plants in between other crops, and sometimes plants will repel plants away, almost like citronella does for mosquitoes. Raza has a question about what we're talking about right now, so I'm going to answer it. Ooh, and Paul T. How important will environmental legislation be? We'll take a break after this first math question to go through the 10 pieces of legislation you need to know. We'll do it very quickly because you don't need to know more than 1 or 2 sentences about each, but we will go through these and I'll show you where to find them in my link tree. Okay, on we go. I'm sorry El Nino and La Nina are just not in the cars tonight, but 4.9 is the video. Check it out if you're concerned. I will say there hasn't been an FRQ about it in a while, so it's possible. It's possible. So let's get back to the matter at hand though here. Justify how this method would benefit humans. Well, we talked about pesticides. Someone in the chat named Hayden keeps saying something about inhaling pesticides, which you do not want to do. And so if we use crop rotation, or if we use a biocontrol, we're limiting our pesticide use, and we're not inhaling pesticides by the people applying them. So it's better for the farmers and their workers. It's better for people who drink the water because the pesticides don't wash out into the water. GMOs. Absolutely. Yes. Because GMOs can be bred. Shout out to whoever said that. Who was it? The chat goes too fast sometimes. I like to give shout outs. Evan. Well done, Evan. Third shout out of the night. GMOs give the crops their own resistance so that they don't need to be covered with pesticides. That means that there is less pesticide use and fewer pesticides in the water that we drink or inhale. Because remember, pesticides are carcinogens. They can cause cancer in humans. We do not want them. We're certainly not inhaling them. And we're certainly not trying to ingest them in our food. So on we go. So we are to question number 3. Question number 3 is the math-based question. So let's talk about that question here. Habitat destruction and fragmentation can have many different effects on species. Describe a characteristic of a specialist species that would make the specialist species more likely to be negatively affected by habitat fragmentation than a generalist. So because specialist species have really narrow requirements and they are not adaptable, they don't easily switch to a new habitat, they don't easily switch to a new food source. They are going to really be disrupted if we have habitat fragmentation because the habitat they relied on is the only one they really are suited for, or one of the few ones. So they're not going to be able to just move to a different ecosystem that's not fragmented. Yes, take the practice test, very helpful. Shout out to Rajvi with the all caps lock comment. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm on a delay, by the way, so if you're wondering, like, why is he talking about comments that were a while ago? There's a delay there. So now we are on to a tricky question here about suburban areas and cowbirds. So we have a rapidly growing suburban municipality that's a city. They purchase a nearby forested land. They want a housing development that would involve clear cutting much of the area for the construction of single family homes. While evaluating the land, the development committee discovers that development will encroach or infringe or move upon a habitat of wood thrush population. The wood thrush is a solitary territorial bird whose preferred habitat consists of large, intact, densely forested areas. Their populations are also threatened by cowbirds. Cowbirds lay her egg in an existing nest of a wood thrush. After the cowbird egg hatches, the cowbird pushes the unhatched wood thrush egg out. The wood thrush parent raises the cowbird hatchling as their own. If you've never heard of this, it's called brood parasitism. And it is nasty. Look it up on YouTube. There are videos of cowbirds flying in, pecking holes in cardinal eggs, throwing them out of the nest, and then laying their own eggs and fooling the cardinal mother. It's nasty, nasty stuff. Apparently, they do it to wood thrushes as well. So here's a trick. Identify the symbiotic relationship between the wood thrush and the cowbird. This is really specific. I don't think they expect you to say nest or brood parasitism, but it is actually parasitism because they are using the other organism as a resource. And the resource they're using is the nest and the body heat of that organism. So it is parasitism. That's a really hard question. Okay. Describe an ecological advantage of leaving areas of undeveloped forest in a development plan as opposed to clear cutting the property. The biggest one that comes to mind to me is topsoil. So if you leave those trees in place, you're going to maintain topsoil because of the stabilizing root structure. You're also going to get carbon cycling, so carbon's going to be taken out of the air. I'm reading the comments saying exam. You're going to get air purification. Now, what I don't like about this, and again, this is just an unofficial answer from some teachers that crowdsource this, but you need to pack some details onto this. So you get an ecosystem service like carbon cycling, which is taking carbon out of the atmosphere, sequestering it so that there's less carbon change, climate change. Although with ecological advantage, I'd go a little narrower. I'd go with the topsoil, I'd go with the water filtration of the groundwater, or I would go with habitat for organisms and a more stable food web. Go-to answer. If you're asked about anything ecological, try to connect it to a food web. We keep a forest intact. We keep habitats for squirrels. That's food for snakes. We keep habitats for robins. That is a predator to control insect populations. Organized, balanced food webs are key when it comes to ecological advantages or disadvantages. I want to stop for a second to address some issues in the chat. The practice questions in the exam app are not full length. I believe it's 20 multiple choice, and I believe it's 1 full FRQ. I don't think it's 3 full FRQs. You only have access to the full length practice exams through your teachers through AP Classroom. They have to do that. They have to unlock it for you. So talk to your teacher tonight. If they haven't already given you a practice exam, say, hey, could you open up the practice multiple choice and the practice FRQ? You know, it's a little late at this point, but you could try it. It's better than not taking it all. Again, you've got to ask your teacher, though. That's the only way to get access to those. I'm going to answer a couple other questions while I'm here in the chat or looking at the chat. Building up rather than out for part C. That would be a solution. It's not an advantage. If you mean part D, yes, absolutely. Which you do. Clearly, it seems like that. Part D. Yeah. Okay. Oh, 3 full FRQs. Well, that's nice. And actually, the answers for those 3 full FRQs are somewhere on the internet. I can't remember where. I'll try to find them and plug them into the link tree. Yaira, I'm sorry to hear that your teacher quit. Remember, though, teachers are people too. It's been an extremely challenging year. So, oh, Dunce too. Oh, that's hard. I'm sorry to hear that, guys. It has been a crazy year though. So we're gonna move on because worrying about whether or not teachers quit won't get us in better shape for the exam. So let's keep moving on. All right. Letter D, propose a solution to help minimize the effect of the development on the resident population of wood thrush. Yeah, high density, going up. Building up rather than out is perfect. Green roof, maybe, if the habitat has birdhouses or can be used. Yeah, that's a great point. Habitat bridges, connecting habitats. So I'm going to pause one more time to try to answer a couple questions in the chat, but we are going into the math, the dreaded math. And so I think this will be super helpful. Yeah, it's on collegeboard.com. You can find it there. You can score yourself. But yeah, unfortunately, you probably can't fit in a full practice test tonight, but you could email your teacher and see. But it might not be the best use of your time. Do the practice stuff in the app. Try the practice FRQs there. That would be your best bet. Yeah, they're on AP Classroom. They're somewhere else as well. Green belt, great question. It's in karate when you're not a white belt or a yellow belt or... No, I'm just kidding. That's a bad joke. A green belt is basically connecting one habitat space to another. And so it's like a corridor where you kind of go through, you know, and connect two fragmented habitats so that the wood thrushes can still thrive. So here we go. I'm not going to go over VOCs. I'll just say they're volatile organic compounds. Examples are gasoline. They contribute to photochemical smog. That's all I got in VOCs. So let's take a look at the math here. A male wood thrush needs a minimum of 800 square meters of territory for reproduction. The Municipal Development Committee has set a biodiversity preservation target of 275 male thrush territories. Calculate the area that must be set aside. You guys, this is easy stuff. 800 meters squared per male or per wood thrush times 275 wood thrushes or males. That's going to equal 220,000 meters squared. Notice this is really important here. Meters squared. Males. Meters squared. You have to show your work. Look at this. College Board bolded this for you. They don't bold a lot on exams. I have to answer Mahit's question really quick. Why are peat bogs being destroyed? 5 seconds. It's not super important for the exam. Probably for agriculture or development, they're being filled in. I wouldn't stress about the peat bogs though. Moving on to more math, which you know will be on the exam, and so you should be not stressing about, but you should be concerned about. So remember, peat bogs probably not on the exam. Math definitely promise 6% or 6 points on the FRQ. I think the math works out to 8% of the total exam. So again, I'm going to say this one more time, not to stress you out, but to like focus. We know for a fact that the math will be 8% of the total exam. So let's try to get more confident with that 8%. Let's focus here, right? So the real estate developer wants to build a house on the property. The plan will support 1,000 lots with a lot size of 1,100 meters squared. The developer has proposed setting aside land equal to 10% of the size of each lot it sells. Calculate the maximum number of male wood thrush territories that can be created. So here's what we have to do. We have to multiply 0.1 times 1,100 meters squared. That's the lot size times 10% of the lot size. That means the developer is willing to give up 110 square meters of each lot. And each lot is 1,100 meters. That's how we got 110. It's 10% of 1,110 or 1,100. We multiply that by 1,000 lots, and we are now at 110,000 meters squared. Since we know that male wood thrushes require 800 square meters, we can either multiply 110,000 meters squared by one male over 800 meters squared, but you do not need to set it up with dimensional analysis. You could just say 110,000 meters squared divided by 800 meters squared equals 137 male wood thrushes. So if you just want to divide it like that, that's fine. What if you round up to 138? So here's the thing. You can't have a half of a male wood thrush. So I don't know what this number comes out to. It should be close to 137. And so if it's a whole number, like, again, you can't have a half a wood thrush. You can, but that means like a cat got it or something. So round down or round to the nearest whole number, basically. Don't round up if you're dealing with whole numbers here. So, this number was probably 137.4. Round it down. Oh, 137.5? Is that really what it is? I haven't done this I haven't punched this in. If it's 137.5, that's brutal, and I think the answer key would be 137 or 138. Because teachers teach that different ways. Some teachers teach rounding up 0.5. Yeah. Okay, that's brutal then. They're going to give you 137 or 138 then. Because it's male wood thrushes, so it should be a whole number, but they should be giving you one or the other. Yeah, that's just brutal that they would give you a 0.5. I don't know. Yikes. Okay. So, we're going to go on here to some more practice. And this is practice set number 2. Now it's 8:45. So I don't have enough time to go through the whole set. But what I want to do is go through the experimental design and the math, because in my opinion, you have the most control over theirs. You can get those right if you take your time and go slowly. So we're going to go through, again, experimental design and the math on this, and that's going to be our day today. So we have this graph here, and the graph has, again, I like to, tell a story with the graph. What is the graph telling us? This is from Tony V. He's a veteran apes teacher. Oh, brutal. Oh, man. All right. Shout out to Ashley M, too, because she made a Olivia Rodrigo reference. Yeah, it's brutal out here. I wasn't trying to do that, but I've been listening to that album a lot. I can't lie. It's a good album. So anyway, that's funny. It is brutal out here on the exam, and it's brutal for Olivia R, apparently. So on we go. If we're looking at this graph here, again, you want to tell yourself a story. So the story here is, what's the effect of percent slope on annual erosion for 4 agricultural practices? So what we have on the y-axis is annual erosion, in tons per acre. Sorry, it's kind of blurry. You may want to open this yourself. It might get a little more clear. So then we go and we look at the slope, 0 through 30, and the percent of the slope is going to tell us what's the annual erosion per year. Then we have tillage, no-till and cover crop, and crop rotation. So we're comparing all of these different methods, and we're seeing which one results in the least amount of erosion at the different slopes. And then T is the tolerable losses. So we got to pay attention here to the tolerable losses. So first of all, identify the scientific question that resulted in the data. If you ask a question, you have to you have to put a question mark at the end. Like, you have to put a question mark at the end, or you're not going to get credit, because it asks you identify a scientific question. So what are the effects of the percent slope on annual erosion for the following 4 agricultural practices? Tillage, no-till plus cover crop rotation. So you need to add in, again, what's the effect of slope on erosion for these agricultural practices? The title, you guys, is basically telling you the question. So if you have to answer a question that says identify the question, and it's about a graph, look at the title. You can basically just flip the title into a question, and there you go. So yeah, check out the link tree. Task verb sheet should be somewhere in there. And then yes to Madeline. Yes, tilling is basically tearing up the soil, chopping it up, mixing it up, and making sure that you can work it easily. It's advantageous. It makes it easier to plant, but it leads to more soil erosion. You lose a lot of soil that way. So identify the agricultural practice that could be used on a 15% slope without leading to higher than tolerable loss. So this is a little tricky. Let's make sure we understand what this is saying. We need to look at tolerable loss, and we need to be below tolerable loss at 15% slope. So if we look, there's only one type of crop method that goes below tolerable loss at a 15% slope, and that is crop rotation. So we have to say crop rotation. And so the person who said contour or terracing, that's not even on here. So again, I think they're just pointing out ideas, but crop rotation is the only acceptable answer here. So there you go. Describe the effect of adding a cover crop compared to using the no-till method. So we have no-till, dotted line, versus no-till plus cover crop, dashed line. So if we look at this, it's pretty clear that when we add a cover crop to no-till, we're getting lower annual erosion at every slope, like regardless of the slope. So there you have it. Tell yourself the story. What's the story of the graph? The story of the graph is that if we add a cover crop to no-till, the line goes lower, it goes down, meaning less annual erosion of topsoil across all slopes. So, you know, all things equal. Okay, let's go down here to part 4. Identify one natural mechanism of soil erosion. This is a great example where if you said wind, I would be nervous that you didn't earn the point. You would want to say the wind can move topsoil, or the rain can wash topsoil away. Floods washing away topsoil. That's a much better answer than wind. I would not just leave it at wind. Again, these are just crowdsourced answers from teachers on Facebook. I would add a little detail. Wind can carry away soil. Wind can pick up soil and deposit it elsewhere. Identify requires a complete thought. Wind is not a complete thought. Wind carries topsoil away. Wind blows topsoil away. That's a complete idea. And when they say mechanism, mechanism means like, how does it work? All right, I'm going to take a drink. We're going to do the experimental design. We're going to do the math. I will try to answer a couple questions. We'll get out of here by 9:10, 9:15 or so, because I did start late. I was trying to make sure the settings were set up right so we could hop on and go live. But we'll go into experimental design, math, answer a couple questions, and then you guys need to get to bed if you're on the East Coast. You know, study another hour or two, but then get to bed. And if you're on the West Coast, get a little longer to study. Trying to answer a question here quickly. Myra, I wouldn't really restate the question much. It's just potentially a waste of time if it's really long. So keep it fairly short. Fairly short. You know, a natural mechanism is maybe, but you could really just get right into it. Okay, here we go. This is a tricky experiment, so pay attention, follow along here so you don't miss this. Oh, one more question. Kimmy, answers never need to be in scientific notation, but they'll be accepted in scientific notation. You're not wrong, but it does not need to be in scientific notation. Shout out to Pam. She gets the 4th or 5th shout out of the night for the percent change formula. You need that one. New minus old divided by old times 100. Oh, yes. Laws and regulations. We'll do that at the end. Stick around for laws. There's 10 of them you need to know. I'll show you where to find them, but I'll also go over them very quickly. So let's take a look at this experimental design. We have sediment from erosion entering streams, and that can affect water quality. One way sediment can enter a stream is from nearby road construction. Two methods to reduce sediment runoff in streams are to put down straw bales or plant grass. So notice already we know our two groups, straw bales and plant grass. You have to read these questions and think in your head already, what are my groups? What are my variables? What am I measuring? What is constant? Read it with the prompt in mind. Maybe even look at the prompt and know I need dependent, I need control, I need a variable not discussed, and then read it knowing what you need. Lettuce Jr., no formulas will be given, but the only formulas you really need are percent change, and you should know how to calculate growth with CBR and CDR, and somebody can drop that in the chat. So identify the dependent variable state in the hypothesis. What we want to do is be very specific. It's the sediment discharge from each plot. You could also say the sediment runoff, because we are saying right here, the sediment discharge from each plot is measured. Just keep it simple. The sediment discharge. It's right there. I can't say this enough. Don't call it the runoff. Don't say the amount of erosion. Don't say the rainfall amount. They have literally the sediment discharge from each plot. I don't think you can actually copy and paste tomorrow. I don't know if Control-C, Control-V work, but literally, like, take it right out of there. You have to. Oh, yes, rule of 70. Okay, Zach came through clutch with the third one you do need. You do need rule of 70. And thank you for supplying that. Okay. On we go. Describe one way to add a control to improve the design of the study. So add plot C that's in the same area but has not been disturbed at all. Or add plot C that has been disturbed by construction but doesn't have a straw bale, doesn't have grass. So with a control, you want to know what's the background. I'm comparing straw to grass. But what is it if there's nothing there? Or what is it if we don't even disturb it with construction? Okay, on to identify a variable not discussed. The amount of wind, the precipitation, the slope. Slope is huge. We were just up here talking about slope and how slope affects erosion. Take a clue and use it down here. We can talk about the slope. Different amounts of grass. One species of grass might be different than another species. Yeah, copy paste does not work. Copy and paste with your mind. Look at it, read it, and type it the same if it's IVDV. Okay, here's where it gets really tricky. What you have is the straw bale on plot A and the straw bale on plot B. You're collecting water and then you're measuring the turbidity. But the way you measure turbidity is by dropping something below the surface and measuring how deep is it before it can't be seen anymore. So a lot of students think turbidity 12 centimeters. That's low turbidity. It's very clear. But that's actually very high turbidity. It means 12 centimeters below the water, you can't see the disc anymore. But with the planted grass, 28 centimeters below the water, you cannot see it anymore. That means it's further down. That means all right. We have something inappropriate coming in the chat. Sorry, guys. Not bad, though. Like, I think one of the first inappropriate things tonight. So let's just Sorry. Okay. Somebody in timeout. Okay. Man, shout out to YouTube. Great tools catching inappropriate chats. So based on the data in this table above here, make a claim about the stated hypothesis. So it was not supported by the data because the straw bale actually had higher turbidity. You could not see deep enough down into the water. And so that means it had higher turbidity. And turbidity is how well you can see something. So look at a clear lake. You can see that Secchi disk, it's called. You can see that object really deep down underneath the water. In a turbid lake, a really cloudy one, you already can't see that disk just a little bit below the surface there. So there you go. That is turbidity. Okay, we're going to skip down to the map because we're running low on time. All right. Math. Somewhere. Here we go. Okay. We're going to pop this down so we can see it all on the slide. There we go. So we have atmospheric concentration of particulate matter in 1990 and 2016. So in the year 1990, we had 85 micrograms per meter squared, per meter cubed, actually, sorry, we're talking about air volumes. And that number was 85 of particulate matter 2.5. Then in 2016, that number goes up to 188. So here it is. I told you guys, percent change. It is very likely to be on the exam tomorrow. Again, I would not worry about half-life. I would worry about percent change because you're almost guaranteed to see it. Almost guaranteed to see it. I want to answer a couple other questions. Olivia, can you identify the control, independent, dependent? Those videos are kind of my best shot at doing that. I really took my time and tried to explain it there, so I'd check that out. I would also go watch the College Board daily videos, though. That's about as well as I can explain it. Next, though, we have this percent change question. So again, new minus old, so the 185 number minus the 85 number, divided by equals 103, and divided that by 85 to get 1.211, multiplied by 100, 121.1% increase. I think you're fine with 121 or 121.1. So I think that'd be okay. And so again, we went new minus old. 188 is the new number because it's from 2016, which is the new time. So new minus old divided by old, 85, and then multiplied by 100. Now, it's fine if you want to set it out as a stepwise thing where you do 188 minus 85 first equals 103, divide the 103 by 85, that equals 1.211. But I don't think you need all of those steps. I think if you just type this out, like this, I think would be a fine way to do this as well. 188 minus 85 all over 85 times 100. I think that would be fine if you wanted to write it like that because you're still showing your work. It doesn't say that you have to stop and show the sub answer for each step. So I would think this should be totally acceptable as well. All right, trees can remove PM 2.5 from the atmosphere when particulates settle on the leaves and are subsequently washed onto soil by the rain. So they almost like catch the particulate matter. You should put the particulate matter. Usually on percent change, percent is the units because it's percent change, but it would not be a bad idea to do it. I like that. Tip to remember, no NOO, new minus old over old. Yeah, it would be helpful to do units. So you're not going to need 121%. You're not going to need units in the increase there, but it might be helpful to have them here. But scoring guides on the practice exam did not show that. And so might be able to get away with it. You definitely need it down here. Notice how it's in this conversion problem. So 50,000 hectares minus 43,000 hectares equals 7,000 lost times 2.3 kilograms per hectare. Notice they're using this unit conversion. We know that the removal rate of PM 2.5 is 2.3 kilograms per hectare. And that's going to equal 16,100 kilograms decrease in PM10 removal. So pretty easy conversion. 50,000 hectares, we're going down to 43,000, so that leaves us only 7,000 lost. And then we're multiplying that 7,000 by 2.3 kilograms per hectare to get a total decrease in PM 2.5 removal. This is where those units are critical. Having that in your answer is the difference between earning it or not. If you ride your bike twice, does that count as recycling? I don't think so. I don't know. I think that just counts as bicycling. All right. Don't laugh at that. That was even worse than my other joke. Research has shown that hospital admissions for cardiovascular problems increase 1% with every 10% increase in PM 2.5. A city experiences a 23% increase in PM 2.5 concentration and had 7,390 hospitalization admissions for cardiovascular issues for a 1-year period. Calculate the anticipated increase in the number of hospital admissions for cardiovascular issues during the next year if the PM 2.5 concentration continues to rise at the same rate. This is a monster question. This is hard. If you run out of time or if you're low, look how much easier the first one is. This is the easiest. This one's also quite easy, but it's harder a little bit. And this is the hardest one. So just know that on the math, there will usually be a percent change, a moderately tricky unit conversion, and then this is just a tricky question. So the way you want to think through this is that because there is an increase of 1% in cardiovascular problems for every 10% increase in PM 2.5, you want to divide the 23% increase divided by the 10% increase in PM 2.5 to find that there will actually be a 2.3% increase in admissions. Now, that's kind of a tricky thing to think through. So again, if you're freaking out about the one really hard math question, don't. Take your time and double check your math on the calculate percent change and the question here. That's still 4 out of 10 points you burned already. And that's without even looking up at our easy, describe, justify. There's a lot of easy points to learn before that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do subscripts in the exam app. Has anybody that's taken an exam app care to weigh in? I believe they are in there. So here we go, though. If we multiply that 0.023, which is a 2.3% increase, that's the tricky part. How do we get from here, 2.3 increase, to here? Well, 2.3 as a number, as a percent, as a decimal is going to be 0.023. So that's why we're going to multiply 0.023 times 7,390. That's going to equal, this one we should be rounding up to 170 here. So we should not be saying 169.97. How do you have 0.97 of a person admitted to the hospital? So I would go with a nice even 170 here. I didn't feel like this was actually the right number. Remember, I did the math on paper. Oh no, that's right. Yep, 170. So yeah, a good rule of thumb is if what you're dealing with is a whole number, like hospital admissions or wood thrushes, round it up. I mean, how can you have 0.97 admissions? How can you have 0.5 wood thrushes? Yeah, okay, a couple things in the chat I'm going to address now. I'm about to go over required legislation. It's going to be the last thing I do. Another thing, though, Music Maniac, you don't have to use dimensional analysis. Dimensional analysis is one way to set something up, but it's not the only way. You can use non-dimensional analysis. You just have to show reasonable work. Yes, this will be posted right after. Yes, you guys can absolutely pull off some 4s. 6 or 7 out of 10 on FRQs puts you in 4 range. So you totally can. No, so 23% is 0.23, but we had to divide the 23% by 10% because we had a 23% increase in PM, but each 10% increase equals a 1% increase in hospitalizations. So we divided 23% increase in PM by 10% increase in PM, to give us 2.3 increase in admissions. But 2.3 increase is 0.023. So there you go. They will mark you down if you don't round on something that should be whole. Hospital admissions are whole. One whole person gets admitted to the hospital. So it should go up to 170. If you're looking here at a 121.1% increase, I think that's fine. I don't think you're going to have a problem there. I can't guarantee it. It's hard to say, but I think you're okay. But I would absolutely round up hospital admissions. It's a whole number. It's a person. Okay, let's switch gears now to things that you can prep using tomorrow. So what I want to do is kind of walk through with you here, again, what you can use tonight and tomorrow to make sure you're as ready as possible. And so we're going to take a look at this link tree here, and I'm going to show you the settings or the slideshow that you can use. And this is shout out to, this comes to us courtesy of Kristen Shapiro. She gets a shout out. She's a great APES teacher. She's a veteran. She makes very good resources. And for all of you guys, I won't say freaking out because I understand why we're nervous tonight, right? Tomorrow's a big day. But for the people who are concerned is the word I should use. And you're right to be concerned about formulas. This slideshow, which again was in my link tree, which is pinned, it's the Kristen Shapiro Top APES Topics and Equations to Study. But since I'm in it right now, let's just go ahead and copy it and put it into the chat and pin it. And again, this is courtesy of Kristen Shapiro. This is not my resource. She was gracious enough to say, yes, use it, share it with people. She's an awesome teacher. Dahlia asked a question, are you an AP reader? I read last year, and I will be reading this year. So I have 1 year of reading experience. So I can speak with some level of experience about how precise you need to be. But I will say there was no math last year, so I don't know, I don't know about the rounding. Again, though, 169 there, you might lose a point because you should round that up to a whole person. Yes, Ver, I'm sorry that we didn't really learn about monkeys in apes. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's not a class about monkeys, despite its name. All right. So on we go here. There's a ton of stuff. So I want to try to get to the most important. Okay, here you go. Slide 7. Slide 7 has the formulas here. It also tells you a little bit about your calculator. And so you're going to, want to have that with you on test day. But it's also going to tell you about rule of 70, just kind of how to do the math, doing it step by step. Then if you want to look more here are math formulas. So I'm guessing for you guys, for you guys here concerned about math, you've got rule of 70, you've got crude birth rate. This is the more important one. Crude birth rate here. Know how to calculate CBR minus CDR divided by 10. That's going to be the growth rate as a percent. And then you have population per capita. That just means per person. We also have percent change. Remember, new minus old over old. They use an initial and new. That doesn't give you the nice new. I don't think you'll have to do rate of change. You could look at it if you want to. It hasn't been on recent exams, but never hurts. Okay, here's some dimensional analysis. If you're interested in learning more about how to set it up, but you don't have to. You cannot use dimensional analysis as long as your setup makes sense. You can earn points. I like this one. No naked numbers. Don't leave your numbers naked. Don't leave your independent and dependent variables naked. Support them with a little detail on either side, right? Give your numbers a label. Okay, on we go. some dimensional analysis, some multiplication factors for kind of how to do different units, you know, whether we're talking about micro, nano. Typically, all you need to do is go between kilo and grams or you know, meters. So you should know kilo is 1,000 compared to the base units, grams, meters. Centi is you know, below that, 10 to the negative second. So formula for half-life, if you really want this, again, people have asked about it. It's not what I'd study tonight. Great question. Why is that population growth rate? Population growth rate is over 10. So it's because the crude birth rate and crude death rate are per 1,000. So if we go back up here, CBR minus CDR divided by 10, right? And if it's blurry, sorry about that. I might just have low bandwidth on the stream. You might need to just look at this on your own. This is slide 8 if you want to check this out. But yes, we are getting to the legislation. No, we're not getting to El Nino and La Nina. Sorry about that. Video 4.9, you can check it out. Alex, thanks for coming back. So it sounds like you took the exam 2 weeks ago. I hope it went well. And yes, you should include units while showing your work as well, not just in the final answer. Okay, on we go to legislation. It's somewhere in here. Here we go. Okay, the Clean Air Act. Clean Air Act is big. What the Clean Air Act does is gives the EPA the ability to regulate the emissions of pollutants. So they might go to a factory and say, your NOx emissions are too high. You either need to use, you know, a scrubber to reduce them. Yes, this video will be up. Or you need to, you know, be fined for this. So the EPA can fine companies if they don't come into compliance. 5, 6, and 9 are so important because they are land use, energy use, which are huge, and then climate change. But according to the College Board, Unit 9 is 15 to 20% of the exam, and then Units 5 and 6 are each 10 to 15%. So you add that up and you get almost 50%. So there we go. Okay. Legislation, no, Clean Air Act, one of the most important. Got NOx, SOx, ozone, carbon monoxide, lead, and particulate matter. Noticeably absent is CO2. CO2 is not an air pollutant currently. It's actually being litigated in the courts right now as to whether or not it will be counted as an air pollutant, but it is not currently regulated as an air pollutant. Don't use it as an air pollutant on the APES exam. Greenhouse gas, yes. Driver of climate change, yes. Deteriorator of air quality, does it make it worse for us to breathe or see or for plants to photosynthesize? No, so it's not an air pollutant in that sense. No percent error, at least in any previous exam. I mean, maybe percent error goes up from 10 to 30% and they ask you the percent change in the percent error, but I don't think so. Okay, more legislation. Clean Water Act. Big thing to know about Clean Water Act is it is surface waters primarily, and it is working on cleaning up the water more from a cosmetic standpoint, from what we see and from water on the surface and what animals and habitats experience, and less what we actually drink. We have the Safe Water Drinking Act, which now applies to groundwater as well. Get to that in a second. You have sites. This is basically the Endangered Species Act for the whole world. So a key distinction to make is between sites, which is no trading endangered species for the whole world, and the Endangered Species Act, which is no trading endangered species or destroying their habitats for the U.S. We'll take a look at the Endangered Species Act here. It gives the U.S. government the ability to actually buy land and protect it if it's critical for endangered species habitat. We also have the Safe Water Drinking Act here, so regulates how water tastes, you know, essentially what's in the pollutants in the groundwater. So we have PFAS going on in West Michigan. It's being leached into the groundwater. And the Safe Water Drinking Act, if PFAS is added as a critical contaminant and we can set levels for it, then that would be something that the Safe Water Drinking Act could do. Again, like I said, Endangered Species Act, U.S. only. Everybody who knows about the Montreal Protocol, hopefully, bans CFCs, and then, you know, HFCs or HCFCs because they destroy the ozone. But not a lot of you know about the Kyoto Protocol, not the Phoebe Bridgers song, another music shout out there if you guys listen to her at all. I saw a great meme that said Kyoto Protocol, and then it was like, had a picture of Phoebe Bridgers, and I was like, phenomenal. But anyway, the Kyoto Protocol, named after Kyoto, the city in Japan, was an international agreement that basically just tried to lower greenhouse gas emissions. It was kind of like a less successful Paris Climate Accord. Much earlier, I can't remember if it was late 80s or early 90s, it might have been like mid 90s actually, but international agreement targeting greenhouse gases. Big thing to know is that it was targeting greenhouse gases, not CFCs and HCFCs like the Montreal Protocol. So Montreal Protocol repairs the ozone, lets it recover because of banning CFCs. Kyoto Protocol was aimed at lowering greenhouse gas emissions. It's very unlikely you'd have to assess the effectiveness of the Kyoto Protocol. So you don't have to really know that it wasn't super effective or that certain countries didn't ratify or like get on board, but you should be aware that it referred to greenhouse gases versus Montreal Protocol. So yeah, there we go. No, definitely no dates. No dates whatsoever for the laws. Absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah, and shout out to Zach in the chat. Kyoto is basically old Paris Agreement. So there you go. Other laws. Delaney Clause. This is probably the least well understood in terms of APES legislation. It's part of the Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act, and basically it's going to target carcinogens in food. So some dioxins can be endocrine disruptors. PFAS is a great example. Fluorinated compounds. But again, it's just going to be targeting things like BPA in food and really trying to keep people safe from carcinogens. So there's the Delaney Food Clause. And then we have RCRA and CERCLA. I want to talk about those two together, even though they're on different pages. So we have RCRA, and you can abbreviate it RCRA. You do not need to write the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. You can write RCRA in caps. This is going to regulate hazardous waste, and it's going to create what's called cradle-to-grave monitoring. That means that if you make something that's hazardous, like a spray paint can, you have to be committed as a company to monitoring how it goes from being made in your factory to the shelf to going into a landfill eventually. And you have to make an effort to recover it and prevent it from causing environmental contamination. So you could enforce RCRA more strictly to limit groundwater contamination by regulating what goes into landfills. An example of how it would apply. Then we go back up here to CERCLA. CERCLA is basically what sets up what are called brownfields and Superfund sites. So when a site becomes really contaminated, the government will actually set aside a lot of money to pay for the closure and the cleanup by the local community. And so CERCLA gives that money to the community to do this. So CERCLA, trying to think of a way. CERCLA, think about circling on the map. CERCLA, circle on the map where the contamination is and clean it up. If we go down to RCRA, think about like, oh, all right. RCRA, RC is a cola, a soda, and you don't want your RC plastic bottles to end up in the ocean, so you've got to keep track of them the whole way. That's all I've got for a word association for RCRA. Yeah, CERCLA, yes, Love Canal. Madeline made media. You have a great APES teacher, clearly. Love Canal is a phenomenal example of basically a call to action. And yeah, really something I wish we had more time to talk about. But how are endocrine disruptors and carcinogens related? Endocrine disruptors target the endocrine system, the hormone system, so they can turn fish intersex. They could turn frogs hermaphroditic, so they can't reproduce. Some endocrine disruptors are also carcinogens, but they're not totally... they're separate things, but some of them do both, if that makes sense. So certain things can be an endocrine disruptor and a carcinogen. Dioxins are probably an example. Phthalates probably could be an example of those as well. If you're looking at endocrine disruptors, other good examples, mercury, DDT, things that can bioaccumulate and biomagnificate. All right. How to remember RCRA? Yeah, I didn't have a great way to remember it. RC is a cola, and think about your, cola cans or your cola bottles. You don't want those to end up in the ocean or the soil, so you should recover them. I don't know. Not the best. Oh, yeah, let me drop the score calculator. Well, let me just put it in the link tree. What I'll do is add the score calculator to the link tree. So I'll go in and I'll do a little link tree maintenance right after this. so that everything you guys saw here is on the link tree and it's labeled and you know how to find it. So I'm just going to confirm a couple more questions. I'll answer one or two more questions in the chat, and then I do have to head out. I have to get some of this food that I'm going to cook for my students tomorrow. So shout out to the GRP 8 students that are here. Kyra in the chat moderating, providing great questions. I don't think she had to block as many people, which is great. But that was a huge help. So appreciate it. There she comes again with the link tree. We'll make sure it gets pinned. Oh, never mind. I'll just drop it in myself and pin it just so that you guys have it. And then you just check the link tree in like 10 minutes or so. What I'll do is I'll go in and I'll drop in the score calculator. Anything else you guys can think of that isn't in the link tree that you're like, oh, that'd be helpful to see. Let's just look through the link tree, because honestly, if you're struggling here tonight and wondering like, what should I do? Let's look through the link tree and talk about what you should do, and then you kind of know what to do. So if you are in good shape and you want to cover everything, do the top 10 must-know exam topics. But this is like if you're already thinking, oh, I've got a 3 for sure, I'm securing a 4 or 5, then you could do the top 10 must-know exam topics. That's going to give you 1 topic from every unit, 2 from topic 9. If you are like struggling here, like if you're thinking, I don't know if I'm going to pass, go to my channel and let's, oh, we don't need to listen to this. Go to my channel and go to the playlist section, and it's going to load super slow because we're live streaming. So you guys can find it, but go to my channel and find Unit 9, Unit 5, and Unit 6. So that would be what I would do if you are thinking, yikes, I'm not even sure I'm like passing this thing. 9, 5, and 6. Make sure you know the math. So that is what I would say there. All right, I love the positivity. I love the manifestation of 4s going on. Thank you guys so much for showing up. This has been a lot of fun. One more time, just looking through the link tree, you've got the top 10 must-know exam topics. You have the 2 practice FRQs, or the release FRQs with the scoring key. This will also have the link to the live stream replay if you didn't catch the whole thing or want to review some of it. This is the Kristen Shapiro Top APES Topics plus equations, really helpful. We just looked through that. Exam review packs for each unit, probably not as critical. I wouldn't worry about the review schedules. Then you go down here. These are all the APES note slides. If you don't have time for the videos, you just want to watch the slide, look through the slides, they're in there. Those are probably the big things I would do at this point in time. So great job, everybody. Thanks for coming to the review. Yes, you can use abbreviations for policies. RCRA and CERCLA should be good. EPA is good. Endangered Species Act, all of those great things. Yes. Calming. Oh, no, that says claiming. You want to be calming, though, as well, right? Be calming. Good luck to everybody. I hope that you all do well tomorrow. I'll try to, come back through with some goodwill wishes before tomorrow, and we're going to call it a night tonight. So see everybody. Have a great night. Good luck tomorrow. Get your 8 hours of sleep. And as always, you know what to do. Think like a mountain, and make sure you're writing like a scholar.